In this CineGuru tutorial, we're going to take a look at some of the new functionality we've added to version 1.5, starting with post-processing triggers. Now, CineGuru Classic has been getting a lot of updates recently, and one of them has been the addition of LUT filters. These are sort of post-processing filters that you can apply to your game to change the look and feel of your scene. LUT stands for lookup table. A lookup table is essentially a table of values that takes any RGB value of any pixel on the screen and maps it to another value. So for instance, with this LUT, Desert Table, it's taken the blue of our sky and of this barrel and changed it to a kind of an orange colour, and it's taken the green of our grass down here and changed it to a sort of a teal colour. And this can be used to give your level a unique look and feel, but up until recently this was applied globally to the entire level. So you would just select this in test game and that would be how your level would look in its for its entire runtime basically. But we looked at this and thought that actually it might be nice to have these effects triggered on command, because you might be running around with perhaps no LUT on your game like this, and you might want to go and trigger a cinematic and have it have its own unique look. You might want to use perhaps one of the filmic LUTs to give it a little bit more of a sort of a cinematic look. So we asked for a couple of Lua commands to be added to the CineGuru source code, and they have been. As of the time of recording, they're currently in the public preview and the beta version, but by the time this update comes out, hopefully everyone will have access to these commands. And because of that, they'll be able to make use of a new trigger that we've added to CineGuru, which is called the post-processing trigger. So let me just find that for you. So in your CineGuru folder, you'll now find a new object, a new trigger called the post-processing trigger. So if I place that in the map and just zoom in a little bit, it sort of looks a little bit like a colorist's wheel. You've got the color wheel on here, and professional colorists that sort of do all the grading and color correction on all of our sort of films and TV shows that we watch nowadays, they have these sort of spherical dials that they use to dial in very specific colours. Normally they have 3 of them actually, but for the purposes of our little marker we just have the one. But you get the idea, it's a sort of a distinctive shape and design. And when you open up the post-processing trigger, you'll find that it has 5 different parameters that you can edit according to your needs. So the first, most obvious one really is, what's the LUT that you want to trigger during your cinematic? If you want to know the name of all of the LUTs that come with CineGuru, you can go to CineGuru's files, and there is a new folder that's been added recently called LUT Bank, and in here you've got all of the different LUTs. They're saved as PNG files, and yeah, you've got all the different names here. For the purposes of our tutorial, we're going to pick a really distinctive one, Chroma Table. So that changes all of our RGB values to sort of black and white. So it's going to be very obvious if it's working or not. So the first thing I'm going to do is type in Chroma Table into our sort of LUT parameter. The next thing I need to do is specify a camera that is going to trigger the LUT. So this simple scene that we've got here has 3 cameras. They're called camera 1, camera 2 and camera 3. So I'm literally just going to say camera 1 triggers the LUT. We also have a facility here to delay the triggering of the LUT. So perhaps camera 1 is triggered and we sort of begin the shot, but maybe we don't get the LUT come in straight away. For this example, I'm just going to leave the delay as 0. We also have a node function as well, so if it's a complex camera move that goes through multiple different camera nodes, you can pick which node you want the LUT to come in on or after, but these are all simple static cameras. They don't have nodes, so again we'll do 0 for that. And there's also a duration parameter as well. So camera 1 here is a 4-second shot. The most likely chance is that you'll want a LUT to last the full 4 seconds of the shot, but in case you don't, in case you only want it to last for, let's say, 3 seconds, you could type in 3000 here. For the purposes of this example, we'll just leave that blank. And we can actually delete both of these delay and node variables, because we're not actually using them. They're 0, so they're not really being used. So now, when we fire up our cinematic, we can go into our Cine trigger zone and trigger that camera. And as usual, we've marked it with a bit of sand. This sort of text on the bottom is just for debugging for our purposes, but this will be gone when you use it. And sure enough, when the cinematic triggers, our shot is in black and white. So perhaps this is some sort of flashback about the barrel. But you'll notice that only camera 1 is in black and white. The other two cameras, camera 2 and camera 3, are not black and white. If we wanted to add black and white to those, we just have to create some more post-processing triggers, and I'll just drop those in there, and then just literally edit the name. So camera 2 for that one, and camera 3 for this one. And in fact, just so we can kind of demonstrate the duration function, we'll say we don't want a delay on it. It doesn't come after a specific node, but it only lasts for 2 seconds. So the last 2 seconds of camera 3's shot are actually going to be going back to the LUT that was on the level before we started the cinematic. So at the moment there isn't a LUT that's part of the level. It will actually register what LUT is assigned to the level. So if we went back to Desert Table, for instance, if our whole level was like this and we're running around in sort of orange and teal goodness, we then trigger the cinematic, and you can see we switch over to the chroma table, the black and white look, and it lasts for camera 1 and camera 2. And then when we go to camera 3, after 2 seconds, that LUT then switches off, and we then go back to the LUT that we were on before. So that's a pretty simple example. I've also made sure to include these in our CG examples map. So this is an FPM that actually comes with CineGuru. The purpose of it is to basically give you an opportunity as a user to go and see how you might set up these different functions in CineGuru. And you might remember this if you've accessed this map before, but we have all the different functions laid out here, and it demonstrates simple camera moves, complicated camera moves. It demonstrates focal points and action texts, sound effects, all that good stuff, credits. And I've added a couple of new triggers here just to sort of demonstrate how one might use the post-processing trigger. Our first example over here is just a simple 2-camera setup, and it's pretty much what I've just shown you already. When the player enters this Cine trigger zone, these post-processing triggers are set to trigger a LUT for each camera, and I think it's actually a different LUT. Yeah, see this one, the second camera triggers a different LUT, PS_filmic. Then we have a slightly more complicated example over here, and this is where we start to demonstrate how the delay function can be used. So when we enter the zone for this particular cinematic, we've got a 3-camera setup here. The first camera is just this simple push in on this box, and I think it's a 4-second shot. Our post-processing trigger actually has a delay built in, so we've added a 1-second delay. So the first second of the shot won't have a LUT applied to it, and then the rest of the shot will. Then we cut to camera 2, which is this kind of high angle shot looking down on the box, and here we've added both a delay and a duration. So again, there'll be a delay of 1 second without a LUT, then there'll be 2 seconds with a LUT, and then we'll go back to not having a LUT. And then lastly, we've got our complicated camera move here. It's a moving camera that passes through 3 nodes and then goes to an end point. And here we've been able to use the node parameter. So when camera 21 is triggered, there's no delay, but the LUT doesn't come in until we pass node 2, which is the sort of midpoint of this shot. And it lasts for the rest of the shot. So once the camera passes this node, it will then have the LUT applied to it. And I think all these different shots have different LUTs applied, so you can see how they work and that they are working. So I'll load up test game and just give a quick example of that. I'll have to run past all of our other examples first. You can see that this level doesn't have a LUT applied at the moment. So first off, I'm going to trigger this cinematic, and you can see that we've started with our first shot that had the chroma table LUT on it, and then we went to a second shot which had PS_filmic on it, so 2 different looks, but no delays there. Then we go to our second example, and here there will be a delay of 1 second, and then our LUT switches on. There you go. And then we go to the second shot, and there's another delay, and this time we get 2 seconds of a LUT, and then it switches off. And then we go to our complex move, and our LUT doesn't trigger until we pass node 2. And so for the rest of the shot, we get this sort of this other LUT. I think this one's called Moonlight Table. There we go. It's a sort of a day for night look. So we think this is a really cool feature. It's been something I've been wanting to add for a long time. We had to kind of work with the developers of GameGuru to get the Lua commands added. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you, the users of CineGuru, make with this extra functionality. Now, there is one last thing I do want to demonstrate about the update to CineGuru 1.5, and that is the fact that you can now trigger cameras from action texts. So this came about because when we were getting ready to put CineGuru on Steam, you might have seen the little sort of video I did where there's an astronaut walking around the CineGuru testing facility. All of the actor movements were all mapped out while the map was still very basic, and I had cameras that were supposed to be tracking actors and things like that. But as I added more and more clutter to the level and fleshed it out, I found that the performance of the level dropped. I don't have the world's best graphics card, and it didn't take a huge amount for the frame rate to take a hit. And the trouble is, when it's not at a solid 60, it's very difficult to time actor movements because the animations are all based on frames, not on time. So what would happen is cameras would trigger and they were supposed to follow actors, but actually the actor hadn't even started their walk yet. So the camera would be either ahead of them or behind them, and it very quickly got out of sync. So I asked my co-developer, Armin Moses, was there anything we could do about that? Was there a way that we could trigger actors using action scripts? And it turns out there is. He added that functionality. So if I just go over to Script Bank and show you the action text for this very basic scene. So it's called camtrig.txt. So we've got this simple setup where when the player enters this cine trigger zone, an actor is triggered and they run a very simple action text. There's a little idle animation as always, and they move to a mark, and then we have this new command, trigger_camera1. And this is our camera 1 over here. You can see camera 1 is a 5-second shot with a 1-second fade in from black, and there is a slight zoom on there as well. So remember, the cine trigger zone in this instance only triggers the actor. So initially, all that's going to happen is the actor's going to walk to that spot. But when they get there, that's when our cinematic triggers. And in fact, just to kind of tie everything back together, I'll drop in a post-processing trigger, and I will set that up to have a LUT active during this shot. So we'll use chroma table again, and we'll call it camera 1. That's the camera that needs to be triggered before this LUT is enabled, and we don't want to delay, and we don't want to have it only last for a certain number of seconds. So now, when we fire up this level, remember, when we go into the cine trigger zone, only the actor will be triggered, and they'll walk to their mark, and when they get there, bang, we've triggered our camera. So hopefully this will make it easier to keep cameras in sync with actors, because that camera will only fire when that actor reaches that spot. So yeah, hopefully it'll be easier to kind of keep actions in sync now. This is particularly relevant if you're working with longer cinematics, because it's very easy for stuff to go out of sync, especially if you're kind of creating stuff that's over sort of like a minute, 2 minutes long. You just need one little thing to kind of go out of sync earlier in the cinematic, and it just all goes out. So hopefully this will alleviate that problem. So that's it for version 1.5. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, please let us know if there's any other functionality you'd like us to add, and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you accomplish with the new functionality that we've added.